The sun hung low over the harsh desert of Kareth. 9. The Deathworld planet, casting long shadows across the military academy. Cadet Lyra tightened the straps of her armor, her fingers brushing the cold metal plates. Today was her first combat exercise, and though the training hall was filled with her peers, she felt the weight of isolation. Being a Deathworlder meant surviving conditions no ordinary human could endure. She was fast, tough, and smart, but the academy tested every limit. The sound of boots echoed through the hall as the instructors signaled the start of the exercise. Lyra's pulse quickened. She sprinted forward, weaving through obstacles, her eyes scanning every corner for her assigned opponent. The hall was massive, with metal walls, suspended walkways, and a series of training pods. Everything was designed to challenge agility, endurance, and cunning. At first, the exercise seemed straightforward. Lyra dodged, blocked, and countered the attacks of automated drones, her reflexes honed from years on the Deathworld plains. But then, from the shadows of side corridor, a rival cadet emerged. He was taller, heavily armored, and wielded a plasma pistol, a weapon strictly forbidden for training exercises. Time slowed as the cadet aimed. The first shot struck Lyra's shoulder, throwing her off balance. She gritted her teeth and twisted mid-air, narrowly avoiding another blast. Sparks flew from the walls as plasma bolts ricocheted. The other cadets froze, watching in horror. Some gasped, others ducked for cover. No one had expected a real attack inside the exercise hall. Lyra's body slammed against the cold metal floor, pain radiating through her torso. The forbidden plasma weapon had grazed her side and chest, and she fell hard, sliding across the hall. The crowd of cadets remained silent, unsure if she would rise. Her vision blurred. Dust and smoke filled the air. Her ears rang from the blasts, and for a moment, it seemed that the fight was over. But Lyra's mind burned with determination. The thought of defeat was unbearable. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, Deathworlders who had survived extreme storms, venomous predators, and ruthless wars. She would not die here, not in front of these people. She felt the surge of raw anger and adrenaline. Her body trembled, but she refused to stay down. Slowly, painfully, Lyra lifted her head. Her hair clung to her sweat-soaked face. Her eyes, blazing with fury and resolve, locked on the cadet who had attacked her. He froze for a moment, shock spreading across his features. He had expected an easy victory, but Lyra's gaze promised something far more dangerous: resistance. Then she saw it, a heavy steel door lying against the corridor wall, part of a storage module. Without hesitation, she dragged herself toward it. Her fingers gripped the cold metal, and with a roar of effort, she ripped it from its hinges. The sound of tearing metal echoed through the hall. Her peers watched in disbelief. This was not just survival. It was power, determination, and defiance made manifest. Holding the door like a shield, Lyra pushed herself upright. Plasma bolts struck the metal with sparks flying, but the door absorbed the impact. The rival cadet shouted orders, trying to regain control, but Lyra advanced relentlessly. Her movements were precise and brutal. With every step, she closed the distance, using the door to block attacks and strike back with swinging force. The cadets who had been watching now cheered and shouted. Some scrambled to join the fray. Others simply gawked, amazed at her strength. The instructors, though alarmed, observed silently. This was beyond any standard exercise. They were witnessing a Deathworlder's instinctive power, honed by years of survival and determination. Lyra smashed the door against the support column, sending it sliding and scattering sparks across the floor. Her opponent stumbled back, unprepared for such sheer aggression. She pressed the attack, each swing of the door demonstrating her skill, her speed, and her refusal to be beaten. Sweat poured down her face, muscles ached, and every breath was labored, but she did not stop. She could feel the energy of the hall shift. Where fear and doubt had been, awe and tension now took over. The rival cadet tried to raise his plasma pistol again, but but Lyra moved faster than he anticipated. She used the door as a battering ram, sending him crashing into a pile of training equipment. Sparks flew, alarms blared, and for a moment, silence fell. The hall seemed frozen. Every cadet and instructor stared at Lyra, breathing heavy, eyes wide with disbelief. Then she raised the door high, ready for the next challenge, and charged forward. The camera, or rather, the viewpoint of the audience, would capture her alone, battered but unbroken, charging into the chaos with fire in her eyes. It was not just a fight for survival. It was a declaration. Lyra was a Deathworlder. She would not bow. She would not die. And any who doubted her strength would soon learn the consequences. The hall erupted in chaos as cadets scattered, instructors shouted, and plasma, fire lit the room. But through it all, Lyra moved like a storm, unstoppable, unyielding, and blazing with fury. Her first lesson at the academy had ended, but it had also begun. The fight, the rebellion, and her path to proving the strength of Deathworlders had only just started. And somewhere in the back of the hall, a shadow watched, whispering, "She is not like the others. She will change everything." The alarms blared across the military academy, echoing through the metal corridors like the roar of 1,000 engines. Smoke drifted from the sparks that flew as Lyra had ripped the heavy steel door from its hinges. Her heart pounded, but there was no time to pause. Rival cadets, angered and humiliated, pursued her relentlessly through the training hall, their footsteps pounding like war drums. Lyra stumbled into the barracks corridor, the narrow passage twisting and turning in a confusing maze. The walls were lined with storage crates, training weapons, and suspended platforms above. She darted from cover to cover, using her agility to dodge plasma bolts and swinging melee weapons. Each blast that missed her left scorch marks on the metal walls, reminding her of the danger pressing behind. Her mind raced. She had to escape the hall, reach the outer corridors, and get outside into the open desert where she had the advantage. But the academy was designed to trap cadets, especially ones who defied the rules. Every door she opened seemed to lead to another set of obstacles: automatic turrets, electrified panels, and motion sensors. The place was a trap, and her enemies knew it. A group of rival cadets cornered her near stairwell. Lyra crouched low, bracing herself against the cold floor. Their plasma pistols glowed, aimed directly at her. She calculated the distance, timing, and trajectory. Then, in one fluid motion, she kicked a nearby crate into their path. Sparks flew as the crate hit a motion sensor, activating a security drone overhead. The drone's bright lights and mechanical roar startled the cadets, giving Lyra the split second she needed to leap past them and dash toward the next corridor. She ran, chest heaving, sweat pouring down her face. Her muscles ached, but exhaustion could not stop her. She could hear the shouts of the cadets, the clanging of their boots on metal floors, the distant alarms growing louder as more academy security units joined the pursuit. Lyra's survival instincts took over. Every twist, every jump, every slide was precise. The maze-like barracks became her battlefield, and she was its master. At one point, she rounded a corner and found the hallway blocked by an energy gate, a barrier designed to trap intruders. Plasma locks shimmered, making the passage impossible to cross normally. Lyra's mind raced. She glanced around, searching for an alternative. Then she spotted a maintenance panel on the wall. With trembling hands, she ripped it open, exposing wires and circuits. Using her compact plasma knife, she cut and rerouted a few key connections. The gate fizzled and died, the hum of energy fading. She slipped through just as two cadets appeared at the other end, their shouts of frustration echoing in the corridor. The barracks opened into a massive training atrium, filled with suspended platforms, balance beams, and practice dummies. Lyra sprinted across the atrium, dodging drones and leaping over moving obstacles. She could hear the approach of her rivals from above. Some climbed ladders, others tried to leap across platforms, but Lyra's speed and precision kept her ahead. The atrium was dangerous, with pitfalls and swinging obstacles, but it was also her advantage. She had trained on Deathworld terrain for years. Agility and quick thinking were second nature. Then came the most perilous challenge, a narrow catwalk suspended over a pit of machinery. The catwalk was unstable, each step creaking and groaning under her weight. Plasma bolts shot from the walls, forcing her to move faster, her boots scraping against the metal. One misstep, one slip, and she would fall into the gears below. Lyra's pulse raced as she balanced, her eyes fixed on the exit at the far end. Her breathing was steady but sharp, every nerve alert, every muscle tense. Just as she reached the midpoint, a rival cadet leaped onto the catwalk behind her, aiming a plasma weapon. Lyra spun, swinging the steel door from her shoulder. The impact sent the cadet staggering backward, nearly losing balance. Sparks flew from the metal collision. Lyra didn't wait. She bolted forward, pushing past fear, past pain, and past exhaustion. Finally, she reached the exit hatch at the far end of the catwalk. It was reinforced, locked electronically, but she had anticipated this. She pulled out a small plasma cutter, carefully slicing through the lock. The hatch hissed open, revealing the blazing desert outside. The cool night wind hit her face, a welcome relief from the stifling corridors. She took a deep breath, the stars above shining faintly over the desert plains. But her relief was short-lived. The rival cadets weren't far behind. She could hear them scrambling onto the catwalk, shouting, and preparing to follow her outside. Lyra's instinct screamed at her to keep moving. She sprinted across the open ground, weaving between rock formations, her eyes scanning for cover. Behind her, the academy lights glared, searchlights cutting through the darkness, scanning for any trace of her. Then she spotted it, a narrow canyon that could hide her from view and slow her pursuers. She veered toward it, kicking up clouds of sand. The rival cadets hesitated at the canyon entrance, unsure how to follow without risking injury. Lyra slipped into the shadows, disappearing from sight. The wind carried the distant shouts and curses of her enemies. But for now, she had gained a precious advantage. Breathing heavily, Lyra paused for just a moment, allowing herself to feel the relief. She was alive, she had escaped the barracks, and she had survived the Academy's deadliest traps. But she knew the danger wasn't over. The assault on her life had been deliberate, personal, and calculated. Someone wanted her out of the Academy, or worse. Lyra's eyes narrowed, reflecting the moonlight. The desert stretched endlessly before her, full of danger, predators, and secrets. But she had survived so far, and she would survive the next challenge as well. The fight had only begun. The rival cadets would not stop, but neither would she. With her heart steadying, she glanced at the horizon. The journey through the desert would be perilous, the challenges deadly, but Lyra was ready. She was a Deathworlder, forged in the harshest conditions of the galaxy. And she would not be brought down so easily. Not by rival cadets, not by weapons, and certainly not by fear. The desert stretched ahead, dark and dangerous, but Lyra sprinted forward, every step a declaration. She was alive, she was strong, and she would fight to the very end. The desert of Carith, 9 stretched endlessly, a sea of jagged rocks, shifting sand, and dangerous cliffs. The Academy's lights were faint on the horizon behind Lyra as she sprinted across the dunes, her boots kicking up clouds of sand. The night air was dry and cold, but she hardly noticed. Her heart pounded with the rhythm of survival. The rival cadets were close behind, their shouts carried by the wind. Lyra's mind raced. She had survived the Academy's traps and now faced the open desert. Here, she could use her agility, strength, and experience as a Deathworlder to her advantage. Her muscles burned, but each stride was precise. She leaped over sharp rocks, slid down steep dunes, and twisted around jagged cliffs, forcing her pursuers to slow down. Behind her, the rival cadets struggled to keep pace. Some stumbled in loose sand, others nearly fell over rocky outcrops. Lyra glanced back briefly. Their faces were twisted with anger and frustration. They had expected her to be trapped inside the Academy, weak and vulnerable. Instead, she had become a storm, unstoppable and fast. Suddenly, a low growl echoed through the canyon ahead. Lyra froze, eyes scanning the darkness. From the shadows, a massive desert predator emerged, its scales glinting faintly under the moonlight. Its claws scraped the rocks as it stalked forward, eyes fixed on her. Lyra knew immediately. This was one of the Deathworld's deadliest creatures. One strike could end her life in seconds. But the cadets behind her were unaware of the predator. Their focus was entirely on catching her. Lyra's mind raced. She had no choice but to use the predator to her advantage. Carefully, she shifted her path, drawing the creature's attention while keeping the cadets between herself and the predator. The predator lunged, snapping its massive jaws. One cadet screamed as the beast's claws struck the ground inches from him. The cadets scattered, panicked, and Lyra seized the moment. She sprinted down a narrow canyon, her breathing steady, her eyes sharp. Rocks and sand flew underfoot as she ran faster than any ordinary human could. The predator's heavy steps thundered behind her, but Lyra did not falter. She had faced creatures like this on Deathworld for years. She knew how to survive. Leaping onto a narrow ledge, she balanced carefully, forcing the predator to navigate a more difficult path. Its claws scraped the rock, sending sparks and sand flying, slowing it down just enough. Lyra's path twisted through a series of rocky tunnels, each more treacherous than the last. She could hear the shouts of the cadets fading as they tried to navigate the unfamiliar terrain. Some of them tripped or fell, cut and bruised by jagged stones. She didn't look back. Every second counted. As she exited the tunnels, the desert opened into a wide plateau. The moonlight glinted off a series of sharp cliffs and deep crevices. Lyra saw a natural canyon forming a narrow passageway leading toward a distant ridge. She knew she could use it to trap the predator and her pursuers. With a surge of energy, she sprinted forward, sliding down a dune and kicking up sand to blind those behind her. The cadets slowed, slipping on the loose sand, while the predator roared, frustrated by her clever maneuvers. Lyra's strategy worked perfectly. She had bought herself precious time. At the narrow canyon entrance, she glanced back again. The predator was snarling, furious, unable to reach her quickly through the cliffs. The cadets were further behind, trying to regain control. Lyra's heart raced, but a grim smile appeared on her face. She had turned the desert itself into a weapon, using knowledge, agility, and cunning to survive. She didn't stop. The canyon was dangerous. Rocks could fall, crevices could open unexpectedly, but it was also her path to freedom. Her boots pounded the ground, echoing through the stone walls. Plasma bolts from the cadets ricocheted off the canyon walls, but Lyra moved too fast, ducking, rolling, and leaping with perfect timing. A final obstacle loomed ahead, a steep cliff leading to the ridge. The only way forward was a jump across a deep chasm, nearly twice her body length. Lyra assessed the distance, running up the slope to gain momentum. With a burst of strength, she leaped across the gap, landing safely on the other side. Behind her, one cadet tried to follow and fell, crashing into the canyon below with a scream. Lyra's eyes scanned the ridge ahead. The desert stretched for miles beyond it, offering open ground where she could move faster and further from danger. She slowed slightly, breathing heavily but feeling a surge of triumph. She had survived the academy, the barracks, the predator, and the rival cadets' pursuit. The night was still full of danger, but she had proven her skills and cunning. Then she heard a faint sound, a humming, almost mechanical. Lyra's senses sharpened. Somewhere ahead in the desert, there was more waiting for her. Perhaps allies, or perhaps more enemies. She tightened her grip on her plasma knife and continued moving, every step deliberate, every breath controlled. The desert was harsh, unforgiving, and alive. But Lyra was alive too, faster, stronger, and more determined than ever. As she disappeared into the shadows of the desert, the rival cadets were left behind, struggling to survive both the terrain and the predator she had evaded. Lyra knew the journey was far from over. the Academy's conspiracy, the hidden dangers of Deathworld, and her ultimate challenge were still ahead. But for now, she had proven one thing. A Deathworlder could not be stopped. Not by cadets, predators, or the harshest desert. The stars above shimmered cold and distant, but Lyra's eyes burned bright with purpose. She was alive, she was fast, and she was ready for whatever came next. The chase was over, for now, but the real fight was just beginning. The desert wind howled through the jagged rocks as Lyra pressed forward. Her lungs burned with every breath, and her muscles ached from the relentless chase, but she refused to stop. Behind her, the Academy's rival cadets struggled to keep up, and somewhere in the distance, the faint growl of the predator lingered. She needed a place to hide, a place to plan her next move, and she found it. Through a narrow canyon, almost hidden by shadows and sand drifts, Lyra spotted a metal door half buried in the ground. Rust and corrosion covered its surface, but it was intact. Curiosity and hope surged through her. She approached cautiously, listening for any signs of danger. The desert was silent, eerily silent. No cadets, no drones, no predators. Just the wind. Lyra pushed the door open and slipped inside. The chamber was dimly lit by faint, greenish lights that hummed softly. Dust hung in the air, and the scent of old machinery filled her nostrils. The walls were lined with alien technology, panels covered in symbols she did not recognize, stacks of energy cells, and consoles with blinking lights. This place had been hidden for decades, perhaps even longer. As her eyes adjusted, Lyra noticed something more. A figure crouched in the shadows, observing her. She tensed, plasma knife ready. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice steady despite exhaustion. The figure stepped forward, hands raised in peace. "Relax," a calm voice said. "I'm not here to hurt you. My name is Jalen. I've been waiting for someone like you." Lyra narrowed her eyes. "Waiting for me? Who are you? What is this place?" Jalen smiled faintly. "This is an old research facility. The Academy wanted it hidden, buried beneath the desert. Inside are secrets they don't want anyone to know. And as for me, I've been studying the Academy, watching it for years. I know why they're targeting Deathworlders like you." Lyra's pulse quickened. "Why me? Why the attack?" Jalen stepped closer, revealing a holographic map of the Academy and surrounding desert. Red markers showed patrol routes, traps, and restricted zones. The Academy is corrupt. They don't want strong Deathworlders rising in their ranks. They see you as a threat to their control. That's why they tried to kill you during training. You're not just a cadet. They're scared of what you could become. Lyra's anger flared. They think they can stop me? They have no idea what a Deathworlder can do. Jalen nodded. "Exactly. But you won't survive alone. That's why I've been here. I've been waiting for someone with your strength and cunning. Together, we can expose the Academy's corruption and turn the tables." Lyra studied him carefully. He seemed genuine, but trust was rare in her world. "Why should I believe you?" she asked cautiously. Jalen gestured to a console. "Look at this. Evidence, logs, recordings. Every illegal experiment, every attack, every cover-up. The Academy has been hiding it all. And now, with you surviving the first attempt on your life, we have a chance to fight back." Lyra crouched over the console, scanning the data. Her eyes widened as she absorbed the information. Experiments on cadets, illegal weapons tests, secret alliances with off-world forces. It was worse than she had imagined. Her blood boiled. These were not just rival cadets. They were part of a system designed to crush her kind. "We need to move fast," Jalen said urgently. "The Academy will be looking for you, and now, more than ever, they will hunt you. I can guide you through the desert to safety, and we can plan a counterattack. But time is critical." Lyra's mind raced. She had survived so much already. Ambushes, predators, and deadly terrain. But now, armed with this knowledge, she felt a surge of power and purpose. She was no longer just running. She was planning, preparing, ready to strike back. "All right," she said finally, her voice firm. "I'll trust you. But we do this my way. No mistakes." Jalen nodded. "Agreed. Follow me and stay quiet." They moved deeper into the facility, passing corridors filled with ancient tech and hidden rooms. Lyra's eyes scanned everything, taking in details that might help them later. There were supply caches, weapon stashes, and even escape routes carved into the rock, invisible from the outside. It was a treasure trove of resources, if they could survive long enough to use them. Suddenly, a faint vibration ran through the floor. Lyra froze, listening. It was the hum of approaching footsteps, deliberate and heavy. "They're here," she whispered. "Cadets or guards, I don't know, but they're close." Jalen's eyes narrowed. "Good. That means our timing is perfect. They're hunting you, and we're going to turn that to our advantage." Lyra gritted her teeth. Her first taste of escape had been adrenaline. This one would be strategy. The shadows of the hidden facility became their cover, their weapon, and their fortress. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, a dangerous expanse. But inside, Lyra had allies, tools, and a plan forming. For the first time since the attack in the training hall, Lyra felt a spark of hope. She was still alive. She was still fighting. And now, she wasn't alone. Together, she and Jalen would uncover the Academy's secrets, survive the desert, and prepare for the confrontation that would change everything. Lyra tightened her grip on her plasma knife, eyes glowing with determination. The desert outside was harsh, the Academy relentless, but she had found a hidden ally, and with him, the battle for survival was just beginning. The hum of the facility lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, as if the building itself was alive, waiting for the next move. And somewhere deep in the desert night, the Academy's enemies were watching, unaware that the hunter had now become the strategist. The first light of dawn cut across the desert, painting the jagged cliffs in harsh gold. Lyra and Jalen stood atop a rocky ridge overlooking the Academy. The sprawling complex glimmered under the early sun, a fortress of metal and glass, bristling with defenses. Automated turrets rotated steadily, guards patrolled the outer walls, and plasma energy shields shimmered around the inner compound. This was no ordinary training ground. It was a fortress built to break Deathworlders. Lyra tightened her grip on her plasma knife. Her muscles ached from the desert chase, but adrenaline and determination burned brighter than fatigue. Behind her, a group of rebel cadets and allies, gathered by Jalen, checked weapons, reloaded, and whispered plans. They had been watching the Academy for months, waiting for the right moment. Lyra's survival had given them that moment. "The plan is simple," Jalen said, pointing to a holographic map of the Academy. "We split into two groups. One disables the defenses, the turrets, the shields, the alarms. You lead the strike team straight to the command tower. Take out the corrupt officials and expose the Academy's secrets. Timing is everything. Move too early, and we'll be crushed. Move too late, and they'll regroup." Lyra nodded. "Let's make it fast and clean. We hit hard and vanish before they can react." The rebels moved into position. Lyra led the strike team, using the rocky outcrops as cover. Her eyes scanned the fortress, noting patrol patterns, drone flight paths, and weak points in the energy shields. Every step was calculated, every movement precise. They were in enemy territory, but the element of surprise was on their side. Suddenly, a patrol drone hovered into view, its sensors scanning. Lyra raised her hand, signaling the team to freeze. The drone's searchlight passed over them, flicking dangerously close. Lyra's fingers brushed the trigger of her small plasma pistol, but she held fire. She waited. The drone moved on. "Now," she whispered. The team surged forward, sprinting across the rocks, avoiding open ground and laser sensors. Explosives planted by Jalen's team detonated along the perimeter, creating chaos. The alarms blared as turrets misfired and energy shields flickered. Guards scrambled, shouting orders, but the rebels were already inside. Lyra's heart raced. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the chance to strike back, to fight not just for survival, but for justice. They moved through the hallways with precision, disabling cameras and taking down guards silently. Plasma bolts lit the corridors as the Academy's elite tried to stop them. But Lyra's team was faster, smarter, stronger. They reached the command tower, the heart of the Academy's control. From here, the corrupt officials coordinated attacks, monitored cadets, and hid their illegal experiments. Lyra kicked the door open, sending a guard flying backward. Her eyes locked on the main antagonist, the cadet who had ambushed her during training, now standing beside the Academy leader. "You made it," he sneered, drawing a plasma weapon. "But this ends now. You can't survive this fight." Lyra gritted her teeth. "You thought I was weak. You thought you could control me. You were wrong." The battle erupted. Plasma fire crackled, alarms screamed, and the metallic walls shook from explosions outside. Lyra and her rival clashed, knives sparking as they collided. Her training, her instincts, and her Deathworlder strength gave her the edge. Every strike, every dodge, every counterattack was precise, calculated, deadly. Meanwhile, Jalen and the other rebels fought through the outer defenses, taking out turrets and clearing pathways. The Academy's control systems began to fail, power surges, automated doors locking and unlocking, lights flickering. The fortress that had seemed untouchable was now vulnerable. Lyra pressed her advantage, striking her rival cadet across the hall, sending him sprawling. She moved toward the Academy leader, who raised his weapon, energy crackling at the tip. Lyra ducked, rolled, and sprang forward, her plasma knife cutting through a control panel. Sparks flew as the leader's defenses malfunctioned. Outside, explosions rocked the compound. Rebel cadets tore down energy shields while drones fell from the sky. The Academy's forces scrambled, overwhelmed by the sudden, coordinated assault. Chaos ruled the corridors and the grounds. Lyra reached the leader, eyes blazing. "This ends now," she said, lunging. He fired, but she dodged, striking with her knife and sending him reeling back into a console. Sparks and smoke filled the air as systems overloaded. The command tower shook violently. Jalen's voice crackled in her calm. "The evidence is secure. We've got recordings of every illegal experiment, every attack, every conspiracy. The Academy can't hide this anymore." Lyra smiled grimly. The fight wasn't just physical, it was now strategic. The Academy's corruption would be exposed to the galaxy. Every cadet, every soldier, every civilian would see the truth. With one final surge, Lyra ripped the door for the command tower storage room, the same way she had done in training, and used it as a battering shield to knock the leader and remaining guards aside. The control systems short-circuited, alarms went silent, and the Academy's fortress was in chaos. Lyra stood, breathing heavily, the door in her hands, eyes scanning the battlefield. Around her, rebels and surviving cadets cheered. The Academy's tyranny had been broken, at least for now. But Lyra knew the fight was far from over. The desert beyond still held dangers, and other threats would emerge. For now, though, victory was theirs. The corrupt Academy had been struck, their secrets exposed, and Lyra had proven that Deathworlders were not to be underestimated. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the ruined compound, Lyra looked toward the horizon. This was only the beginning. Bigger battles, deadlier opponents, and greater challenges awaited. And Lyra would face them all, stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever. The command tower of the Academy trembled under the chaos. Sparks flew from shattered consoles, alarms screeched, and the walls shook as explosions rippled through the compound. Lyra stood atop the rubble-strewn floor, the heavy steel door in her hands, the same one she had torn from its hinges in the training hall. Her muscles burned from exhaustion, but her determination was stronger than ever. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the final confrontation. Before her, the Academy leader and the cadet who had ambushed her in training stood, their faces twisted with anger and disbelief. "You think you've won?" the leader snarled, gripping a plasma staff that hummed with lethal energy. "This Academy is untouchable. You can't stop us." Lyra's eyes blazed. "Untouchable? You've underestimated a Deathworlder, and that's your mistake." The leader fired the plasma staff, sending a bolt of crackling energy across the room. Lyra ducked behind the steel door, the blast hitting with a deafening roar. Sparks and smoke filled the air, but the door held. She kicked debris out of her path, heart pounding, and stepped forward, charging into the chaos with unyielding fury. Her rival cadet lunged, swinging a plasma baton. Lyra sidestepped, slamming the door against his chest with bone-shattering force. He flew backward, crashing into a console that exploded in a shower of sparks. The leader roared in frustration, swinging the plasma staff with deadly precision, but Lyra anticipated every move. She moved faster, lighter, stronger, each motion a combination of skill and raw Deathworlder power. "Enough games," she shouted, gripping the steel door with both hands. She had survived ambushes, predators, desert chases, and betrayal. Every obstacle had made her stronger. Now, nothing would stop her. With a roar, she swung the door like a battering ram, slamming into the leader's defenses. The plasma staff deflected, but could not withstand the force. Sparks and smoke erupted as the door struck again and again, pushing the leader back step by step. The cadets and guards in the room scrambled, but Lyra's presence was unstoppable. She advanced relentlessly, the door acting as both shield and weapon. Each swing knocked enemies aside, disabled security panels, and created openings in the chaos. The leader's eyes widened in shock. This was not a cadet to be controlled or intimidated. This was a force of nature. Then came the final moment. Lyra hurled the door with incredible strength, sending it spinning through the air. It struck the main console, sending sparks flying and disabling the remaining energy shields in the tower. The leader's staff flickered and died. The cadet who had ambushed her crumpled, unable to rise. Lyra moved forward, standing tall despite exhaustion. Her chest heaved, muscles trembling, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. Around her, the surviving rebels and cadets cheered. The Academy's corruption, its lies, and its tyranny had been exposed. Screens throughout the compound now displayed evidence Jalen had secured, records of illegal experiments, conspiracies, and attacks. The galaxy would see the truth. The leader, defeated but alive, tried to speak, but Lyra cut him off. "You underestimated Deathworlders. You underestimated me. That mistake ends here." With a final decisive strike of the door against the remaining consoles, the Academy's systems crashed completely. Lights went out, alarms silenced, and the fortress that had seemed untouchable was now in ruins. The remaining guards surrendered, too shocked to resist. Lyra dropped the steel door, breathing heavily. She stepped onto the rubble, looking out over the compound. Flames licked the walls where explosives had gone off, smoke curling into the sky. The desert beyond stretched endlessly, dangerous and unforgiving, but she had survived. She had fought, strategized, and conquered. Jalen approached, nodding in approval. "You've done it. The Academy is ours. The corruption is exposed. The galaxy will know the truth." Lyra wiped sweat and dust from her face. "This is only the beginning. There are bigger battles ahead, other threats waiting. But today we survived, and we won." The rebels gathered around, their faces filled with relief and admiration. Lyra's team had survived impossible odds, fought relentless enemies, and now stood victorious. But she knew the fight for justice, for Deathworlders, and for freedom was far from over. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the desert and the ruined academy, Lyra looked toward the horizon. The Deathworld wind whipped through her hair, carrying the scent of sand, metal, and freedom. She had faced death, betrayal, and impossible odds, and she had risen stronger every time. In the distance, shadowy figures watched from the cliffs, remnants of the Academy's allies and enemies alike. Lyra's eyes narrowed. They were a warning. New challenges awaited. But she smiled faintly. She was ready. A Deathworlder never backed down. A Deathworlder never surrendered. And Lyra had proven herself unstoppable. The steel door she had torn from the tower still lay at her feet, a symbol of her strength, resilience, and determination. She lifted it, standing tall against the rising sun, ready for whatever the future might bring. The desert was dangerous, the galaxy vast and full of threats, but Lyra was alive, powerful, and unbroken. Her journey was far from over, but today marked a victory that would be remembered for generations. She had survived the Academy's deadliest trials, defeated the corrupt leaders, and emerged as a true Deathworlder, a force the galaxy would not forget. And as she gazed across the horizon, the wind carrying the echoes of her triumph, Lyra whispered to herself, a vow for the battles ahead. I rise. I fight. I survive. Nothing will stop me. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience on edge, wondering what new dangers and adventures await Lyra in the unforgiving galaxy.